beautiful, elegant, impactful. It's all oohs and ahs until you're asked to quilt them. The most frightening and intimidating of the free motion designs, feathers. Welcome back to our continuing series on free motion basics. I'm Angelique, and today it's all about feathers. Now, I used to be really afraid to do feathers. They looked really complicated. They looked like a really higher level quilting skill, but in fact, they're a lot easier to do than most people think that they are. And they're fast. So they're kind of become a go-to for me when I'm looking for something to really elevate the look of my quilt, but I want to get the quilting done or fill some area really quickly. Feathers are a must. So today I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do some of the most common feathers, the basic feather and what I'm calling the traveling feather. And from those two skills, we're going to work to stitch out some other feather designs to get you started on this road. So what are feathers? As the name suggests, quilted feathers mimic the characteristic shape of bird feathers. They contain a spine from which the feather shapes are formed. Feathers can feel very intimidating at first, as they look challenging, but the basic shape comes from the teardrop pattern, which we covered in a previous episode. So be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. So as I mentioned, if you do a little bit of practice, you'll be a lot better at any free motion design that you do, especially the feathers. So we have designed a downloadable, which you can find in the comments around this video. And I'm going to show you the first one so you get that first skill, which is the basic feathers. All right, so the basic feathers is pretty simple to do. You're going to start at the bottom, so you should see a clear circle down here at the bottom. And we're going to start with that, and we're going to carefully trace up to start our spine. And as we get to the top of the spine, we're going to loop back down. And then we're going to come down the spine just a little bit. So ideally you want to not lift your pencil, but I want to kind of emphasize that you want to come down the spine a little bit further than where you want to start your next feather. And that's going to help to give you that really petal look to it, like that teardrop that we've been working on. So you come down, you come back around, and again, go down a little bit further, come back around, down, come back around, down, come back around, down a little bit further, and come back around. When you reach the bottom, you're going to trace back up. And you know, I'm actually doing pretty good considering I don't have my glasses on. But I'm going to go ahead and throw those on so I can see a little bit better. So we're going to come up the other side and again come around, go down a little bit further. And like with every one of these that we've talked about in our previous episodes, it's okay if you're not perfectly on the line. It's about getting the general shape. With your basic feathers, what you are trying to do is maintain a relatively same size petal along the way the best that you can. Now, depending on your spine, it might get a little bit smaller, but as far as like where your petal is ending, you kind of want those to stay relatively aligned and relatively the same size. So let's go try this on the machine and do some actual stitching. All right, since we need to move to the top to do our basic feather, we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to pull up our bobbin like we always do, and we're just going to make our spine. I like a little wave to my spine. I'm going to just travel down a little bit. All right, so then we're going to sweep up, make that teardrop shape, travel down, swoop up. And we're going to continue that all the way down the spine. Remember, when we get to the bottom, because this is a design with the basic feather that we need to always start at the top, we're going to travel back. So if you have gone over some areas, you can kind of hide that in the way that you travel back. Then you're going to make that next one and continue going down the other side. Got a little bit of an overlap there, that's okay. Nobody would notice it. And we're just practicing anyway until we get really comfortable with our design. The next feather I'm going to show you is what I'm calling the traveling feather. And the reason I'm calling it the traveling feather is that you have to backtrack over certain parts of the feather to continue the design. So this one, there's a couple of different ways that you can start it. Ideally, if you can, you're going to start it at the top where you see this open circle. But when you're actually sewing, sometimes starting at the bottom is not a problem as well. Either way, if you start at the bottom, you're still going to have to come back down. So you're just going to have more overlap and that thicker seam, because the more that you travel along the spine, the thicker it's going to be. But that's okay with feathers, because remember, with a bird feather, that spine is really thick. So it's just going to lend more to the name of this pattern. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and start at the top. Once I put my glasses on so I can see. And I'm going to work my way down, which is creating the spine. And once I get at the bottom, I'm going to make my first feather. And then I'm going to go up to make the second feather. And then I'm going to pause right here at this place. Right? That's where I'm going to have the bounce back or the travel back up to the next one, where then I'm going to make the next feather, come back from the spine, bounce, pause, curve, travel back. And so this just continues all the way until you reach the top. Once I get to the top, I've got to travel back down, because this is a pattern we want to work from the bottom up versus the top to the bottom. You can go to the opposite direction like I did with that one if that's more comfortable. The important thing is doing the bounce back every other feather. And you can stop like we have here and fasten off, or if you need to, you can always travel back down the spine to get to the bottom of your feather to move on to where you want to stitch next. So that part is really up to you in the look and how much fastening on and fastening off you want to do. So like I mentioned, when we practice it, a lot of the times with the traveling feather, you want to start up here. But since I'm already down here, I'm going to show you, you can start from the bottom, but we do want to make that initial one and come back. That initial spine and that first petal is what's going to help guide you and where you need to end each feather. So that's why you always, in this case, want to do the spine first. All right, so we're gonna come up. We're gonna make that first turn. And remember, with the traveling feather, this is a design we want to start at the bottom. All right. We're going to swing out from the bottom, make that petal, come back down. So I'm going to go ahead and take that pause. Then I'm going to come back up the spine a little bit until where I want to make the next feather. Okay. Now I'm going to stop when I run into the previous feather. In this case, I came down a little bit further. That's okay. It's going to look nice and organic. And we're just going to take that up. Notice I kind of come back a little bit, because anytime I do that travel back, it's going to help me get that next shape. And then I'm going to pedal that next one around. And so you can see kind of between the two, these are very independent feathers. These look like they're coming off of each other. So that's kind of the difference in the look between that basic feather and the traveling feather. So we're going to continue this until we finish. Remember, every other feather is going to trace back. Once I reach the top, we're going to come back down the spine and repeat the process on the other side. And once you finish, You can finish either at the top, or if you need to continue from the bottom, travel back down that spine. Okay, now that we have learned those first two skills, the basic feather and the traveling feather, now it's time to add a little pizzazz to our feathers with some echoing. You can echo any type of feather. I'm going to start with the basic feather just to give you a feel for how to do that. So let's move over to a new starting place. All right. And we're going to do it with the basic feather. So remember, with the basic feather, we travel up and we make our first petal, and then we continue our petals from the top, working our way down. So this is the same. All right, so once I've finished my feather design, I can add my echoes. So I'm just going to go around the edge of my feathers. And I can echo as many times as I like. So here I've done one echo, but if I really kind of wanted to fill in the edge, I could continue and do a second line of echo. And this just starts to make your feather more of a filler design. The next feather I'm going to show you is the wonky feather. Now, the wonky feather is one of my favorites because I don't have to worry so much that all of my petals are relatively the same size. With the wonky feather, we're going to have petals of all kinds of sizes. So we'll start it very similar to the basic feather. And they're great because if you have kind of an odd shaped block, like maybe a diamond or something like that, and you really want to kind of fill that shape in with a feather, you're not constrained as much to what's going to fit where. So you can have smaller ones at the top and larger ones at the bottom as the diamond expands. And wonky feathers often look really good if they have some echoing around them. So let's do a little bit of echoing. All right, and that's the wonky feather. All right, let's talk some different feather variations. So our next one that we're going to do is, again, I know I said that the wonky feather is one of my favorites. It is, but this is probably my favorite, and it's the curly feather. And the reason that it's my favorite is, well, as you know from previous episodes, I just love a curl. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this one. Again, I'm going to bring up my bobbin, and I actually like to start at the bottom of a curly feather and work my way up to make that first curl. And then I can work my way down, and we're going to make that next curl. Again, traveling down, traveling up the spine as you get close to the edge. So there's a couple ways that you can do this, and they look great either way. You can come up just above that and come back around, as I'm going to do for this one. And that way it's very close or touching the previous one. Or if you want to be really sure that you touch, you're going to come up and touch and then go from the inside. Now you do get a slightly different look. This one's a little bit more pointed. These tend to round out a little bit more, but with practice, if you slow down, either way you can get the point or the smoothness. It's really up to you in the look that you want. I like them both. Doesn't bother me if they change a little bit. So we're just gonna continue. Once I reach to the top, I can actually work from the top, so I will show you on the way down how you don't actually always have to start from the bottom. And as you can see with these ones, you're trying to get close to the top. Now, they look good whether they're touching or they're not touching. They're very forgiving, they're very fun. It gets you out of that typical teardrop to something that this may be more beginner friendly and looks like you've done a lot of work with it. The next one I'm going to show you is the pointy feather. This starts very similar to some of the other feathers that we did, like the travel back feather. By the way, loving this color. Like the curly feather, I like to work myself up the spine and make that first pointed feather. It's going to look more like a leaf. So we're going to travel up, a little bit of wave to that. Get to kind of a point and come back down. So instead of having that curve like we've done with the other ones, we are creating more of a leaf shape. Work ourselves back down the spine. Okay. And then we're going to start to do the pointed feathers from this point on. You can do them independently, like these first couple that I've done. Or you can run it into a previous feather, like the travel back feather, and travel back up and maybe down a little bit to get the next shape, right? So that it almost looks like one of the feathers or one of the leaves is overlapping. Either or, really up to you, as many times as you want to do it or as few, really depends on what you want your pointed or fern feathers to look like. Traveling back down to do the other side, and we're just going to repeat that process. And again, like some of our other designs, if you're done, you can stop here, or if you want to travel all the way back down, you can, so that you can move on to the next part. Really just kind of depends on you. So the next one I want to show you are a couple of variations. It's just whatever inspires you, but feel free to mix these different techniques together. So we're going to start with a curly feather for this first one. Come back down the spine, and I'm going to start like I'm going to do our traveling feather. So I do a couple little traveling feathers, and as I come back up, now I think I'm going to add one of my little curly cues instead. And I can add a couple of those if I like. I can also then come back with a traveling feather until I reach the top. Now when I do the other side, I do want to be a little bit more conscious to what I have done on this side so that it doesn't look exactly the same on the other side. That's going to give it that more organic feel. When you have natural boundaries like sashings or borders, you can do feathers in those as well. We're going to do another half feather on the other side. This one is going to use the skills of the traveling feather. And then once I finish, again, just like I did before, I am traveling down the ditch to finish that spine up. The last variation I'm going to show you today is how you can use feathers to fill borders. So you don't have to end at your border, you can actually travel around the corner. So I'm going to start over here at this seam, like always, dropping my bobbin. And I'm going to create my spine first. All right, as I approach this corner, I want to take a turn, but I don't want it to be a sharp turn. I want it to be nice and smooth like a curve. So I'm just going to kind of continue to do my shape. And then once I reach the top, then I can do, depending on what kind of feather I want to do, and we're just going to stick pretty much with the basic feather for this one, just to give you the feel for the idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that swoop of that first one, and then I'm just going to continue to work my way down. Right, now where these get to be a little bit trickier is as you're kind of coming around the curve. The shape, you want to try to keep it the same, but you are going to find that sometimes you have to maybe make that feather a little bit smaller to kind of fit around that curve or in the space. It's like, as you can see, I need to do more of a travel down this part so I can make the next one as I'm coming around this corner. Once I reach the top, I can travel back up if I like, or if I'm feeling really confident in my ability to feather, I can work from the bottom. Again, note how when I came around on this outside, I actually made my feather come out more than just kind of doing that curve so that I can make the next one a little bit more curvy as I come around. And if you're really trying to fill in the space, again, adding those echoes are really going to just help take away from maybe any little mistakes that you made and make it look like it was intentional. So if you don't love the way your feathers were looking exactly as you came around, a little echoing just adds that extra pizzazz. So it's really that easy, just takes a little bit of more practice to get comfortable with it. As you see, we did a couple different ways to do it. If I want them all to go up like the one I did on the side here, then I would want to start at the bottom and work my way up. It'll look a little bit more heart-shaped. If I want them to be a little bit more wonky, then I can work more from the bottom. And again, any type of feather design will work with this. It's really whatever I desire. What was your favorite feather that we did today? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know. And of course, these are just some examples of feathers. So be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can find out more about free motion basics. Check out our playlist on more, like those swirls that we did, those little curly cues, and the teardrops is the basics to this. And until next time, we'll see ya.